Hi everyone. Welcome to GenAI Futurecast. I'm your host, Kushnak, and today we're talking to someone who's helped shape the technology behind one of the most important institutions in the country. Howie Morgasen is a vice president at the Federal Reserve System, where he leads strategy, architecture, and integration. He's worked on everything from collaboration tools to infrastructure design, and he's helped big teams use technology to work smarter and safer. Let's find out how he does it and what kids like us can learn from his journey. Hi, Mr. Howie. Thanks for joining me. Before we get into the big tech stuff, could you tell me something everyone listening should know to understand your personality when you were a kid my age?
So, Kush, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I am excited to be here on your podcast. I don't know if I remember all the way back to 9 years old, but as a kid, I was fascinated by how things work. So I like to tinker with things. I like to take things apart. Sometimes it got me in trouble because I took things apart that I wasn't supposed to, and I lost some of the parts. So that wasn't really good. But I really did like to tinker, and I also liked electronics a lot. So I experimented with it, and I had a fascination for how things work. So I did read a lot, did do research. We don't have all the cool tools you have today, like Google and other search engines, and to look things up. We had these things called encyclopedias. They sat on the shelf, and you look things up and you read about it. Now it's all online, which is a lot easier to do. That's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, I'm the same right now. I'm a techie person. Yeah, you might know that because of the whole podcast thing. I really love electronics. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Electronics led me to computers because the electronics is what's underneath the computers that make them work. So I was fascinated by it. I wrote my first basic program when I was in junior high school. So that would be seventh grade. And so I was fascinated by programming and how computers work. And that sort of led me to a career in working with computers because I was so fascinated with it and sort of figuring out what to do. And then I was equally as excited when I found out that people would be willing to pay me to do things with computers. Since I really liked doing it a lot, that was a bonus for it. And it sort of built from the programming. I found out that I enjoyed working with the business people that use the computers to solve problems. And that caused me to sort of work with them and help figure out how to apply technology to sort of solve problems.
I really want to learn how to write a program. How did you write the program and what did it do?
It was a very simple program. It printed a multiplication table from 1 to 10, and it did all the multiplying. So 1 times 1, 1 times 2. And it did that from 1 to 10, and it printed out a table. I think it was 4 or 5 lines total, and I was very excited about it. I printed it out, and I went to show everybody that I was now officially a computer programmer.
That's super cool. You work at the Federal Reserve, which helps keep our financial system stable. For kids listening, how do you explain what the Federal Reserve does in a way we can understand and
Okay.
how technology helps?
So the Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. It was enacted by Congress. The Federal Reserve Act is what actually formed the Federal Reserve. And it's made up of Federal Reserve banks around the country. So the closest one to you is in Dallas, where you are, but there's 11 other locations around the United States. The Federal Reserve helps govern our financial system. So the banks that you go to every day to deposit money or withdraw money from, credit cards that you use every day to purchase things, a lot of the flow of money from place to place, the Federal Reserve has something to do with. And it also creates what we call monetary policy, which is how money is governed and how people use it and what's the correct way to use it and what's not the correct way to do it. We also work with financial institutions like the large banks and help them figure out the best, most compliant way to run their banks. And then we're also a lender. We lend money to banks if they need it, and they pay us back. We charge interest for that. We also work with banks. We do what we call auditing of banks, financial institutions, to make sure they're doing things the right way, to make sure they're keeping track of your money correctly, and that if you need it, you're able to get it. So we also play a role in that as well.
How does Gen AI fit into the way teams work at places like the Fed? Is it easy?
Okay, a great question. Gen AI is taken over. You see it everywhere. Place like the Federal Reserve, which is very secure, we have to make sure that the information that we have is very secure and nobody can get to it. So that when we use tools like ChatGPT, we have to make sure that the information that are in the models that ChatGPT accesses are secure because we have a lot of information which is confidential that we handle and support. And we have to make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. With ChatGPT and Copilot, it's taking us a little longer to get to use it because we have to make sure it's secured or what we call lockdown so that when we use it, we can use it in such a way that doesn't compromise the information that we're responsible for. So we've started using it in the last year or so, and it's made a tremendous difference. At the Federal Reserve, it allows us to look at information that we work with, and the Fed accumulates massive amounts of information. It helps us go through it, spot trends that would be useful to us in planning, over the next couple of years to make sure we're doing things the most efficient way that we can. So that's a little bit about how we're doing with it.
If you use Copilot, it has to be something like MT65 Copilot or something. How do you make sure that the companies like OpenAI, Google, or Microsoft doesn't read your data, which is maybe confidential?
And that's another great question. We work closely with Microsoft, with Google, with others to make sure that we can control the data that we're going to use through ChatGPT or Copilot. So we configure, our working environment with Microsoft in such a way that we can control the data that our people are accessing. They can't get to everything out on the internet. It's just a set of data that we have and they can work on it. Still gives them a tremendous amount of flexibility and work to do, but it gives them a limited data set. So that's what we do to make sure that we're keeping things confidential where they need to be.
I have visited the Fed at Dallas before for Take Your Kids to Work Day. My mother works there. I remember when I visited it, they have like a bunch of security procedures. I can understand security is very important, but what is one way Gen AI can help make systems more secure or reliable?
Interesting question. I do think that the whole idea of security is all about data, right? It's the ability to sort of look at the data as it's going through the network, as it's going through different systems, different applications, and be able to look at that data and sort of figure out what about it, if it's secure, if it's confidential. I think Gen I is really good at that. I think that if you set it up the right way, that you can analyze that data and you can see and you can spot what type of data is coming through. And if there's a particular type of data that's coming through that we're not familiar with, it will allow us to identify that so we can do further work on it and find out if there's additional security measures we should be taking. It's a great analysis tool and it's a great interactive analytics tool so that you can ask questions of it. You don't necessarily have to generate a report, but you can ask to look at the data or assess the data to sort of see what's going on, and it gives you a lot of good insight into it.
I want to know if you have any advice for adults who want to use Gen AI but don't know where to start specifically.
I do think that where Gen AI is where mobile phones were, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that people that there weren't a lot of mobile phones out there, but people were starting to use them and start to do good things with them. I think as of any new technology, the challenge is can you make that technology easy enough to use so that anybody can pick it up and do useful work with it? I think that when ChatGPT first came out several years ago, and people started looking at it. It was okay for technology geeks like you and me. We can pick it up and do stuff with it. But for people that are not like that, it would be difficult to use. What's happened over time is companies like Microsoft and Google have made it easier to use so that you don't have to have any technology experience at all. You can just sit at your keyboard and you can type in, or you can talk to your computer and ask it questions and it can come back. So I think that as it gets easier and easier to use, that more and more people will use it. Also, there's a lot of good information that you can get that was very difficult to get even a couple of years ago, where large companies had access to all of that information, but consumers did not. So if you wanted that information, it was difficult to get to. Today, you can get on a generative AI or even just the search tools, and you can search for things and you can get a lot of in depth information, which is very useful.
I went to Google Labs, and this only works for Google Chrome browsers. I enabled the beta feature that lets you, whenever you type something, a Gemini AI response will be there. So if you have a question which you want to search up without going onto Gemini, you can just search it up instead, and Gemini will be there.
A lot of what's going on with Gen AI is that it's being built into other things, right? So when you go into Gmail, for instance, to read your email, you will now find ads and other things on the side of your browser screen based on the email that you were reading. So what's happening is, Google is using Gemini to analyze your email messages. And based on what's your email message, they will put an ad for a product that is somehow related to the email message you were reading. And when you go to the bank now and you go to the ATM machine, and you have this interaction with the ATM machine, they've built some Gen AI into that. When you press a button or ask a question, it will come back with suggestions for you on things that you might want to do based on, what you're doing right now. So building it in to things that we already have makes it friendlier and more people use it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, this is a message to young minds by you. So, most of our listeners are kids and their parents and their families. What advice would you give to someone my age who's curious about AI?
That's a great question. There's so much educational material out there now to learn about AI, to learn about programming, to learn about search. If you just went to Google and said, I want to look at training for generative AI, you would get a whole screen that came up with different classes that you can take. A lot of them are free, right? No charge. So that might be the best way to start. Another one is a lot of times schools are now starting to teach some of this in classes, even at young ages. And they're also setting up computer clubs, where people can get together, whether it's after school or before school, and they can get together and they can look at new things in technology or what computers are doing and get a chance to sort of work with them. So that's some of the ways you might learn more about it.
I'm gonna move on to the rapid fire round. So, this is my most favorite section. It kind of feels like a game show. So it's time for a quick rapid fire. Just say the first thing that comes to mind. What is your favorite Gen AI tool or platform?
ChatGPT.
What is one word to describe Gen AI?
Awesome.
If you could build an AI for kids, what would it do? Yes.
It would help kids learn. It would help them get a better understanding of the world around them by helping them, make things easier to digest and learn.
Okay. Um, what is a dream AI invention you wish existed?
I would ask for any meal that I wanted and it would appear in front of me instantly.
That's a fun rapid fire round. The AI that you can ask and then ask for any food, and then it'll just show up, make a piece of food appear for you. That I would love.
That would put DoorDash out of business, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that one. Okay, so Mr. Howie, thank you so much for being here. You've shown us that technology isn't just about machines. It's about trust, teamwork, and making systems that help people. To everyone listening, stay curious, keep learning, and remember, your ideas can shape the future. This was Jenny I Futurecast, hosted by Kushniak, powered by Curiosity. See you next time.